and we are recording, so you're good to go.
Good. Good afternoon, everyone. So we're going to go ahead and start this meeting of the Environment and Sustainability Task Force for Friday, June 11th. And I'm calling the meeting to order at 1:05 p.m. And we'll start with the approval of minutes from our April 12th meeting. So I hope you've all had a chance to look at those. And if there are any corrections or changes that anyone would like to make, now's the time. Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion for approval of those minutes?
I'll make a motion.
That was
Rita.
Rita. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
And that's, I'm sorry, who was that?
Tracy.
Tracy, thank you. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Minutes are approved as submitted. And we'll go on to agenda item number 3. And I just wanted to talk to you all a little bit about the fact that appointments are going to be coming up now to our new environmental commission that we helped form. And if any of you are interested in being a member of that commission, would you please call me or email me by next Wednesday? You might think we're starting a little soon, but this is June, the middle of June already, and some council members start making their decisions on board appointments in July. So we want to be sure that if you're interested in serving on either the commission itself or the technical panel, you know, we'd like to know that so that we can see if we can help get you a recommendation to be on the new environmental commission or the technical panel. Just bear in mind, please, that the commission members actually have a vote and the technical panel members don't. They're more advisory in nature, but both of those groups are very important and together make up the environmental commission. So if you, like I said, if you're interested in being a member of that commission and or the technical panel, just give me a call or email me by next Wednesday and we'll get started working on that. We actually, you know, it's up to the council members to make the recommendations and appointments. Well, to make the appointments, we can make recommendations, but it's up to them to make the appointments to the 15-member commission. But it is up to us to make recommendations to them about the 8-member technical panel of experts. So just please, you know, remember there's a difference there and we get to weigh in on the technical panel, but we also get to make recommendations on the 15 members. So that's all I wanted to mention to you on that. And we'll talk more about that at our meeting in August, but we want to get started on that.
Sandy?
So, yeah.
Hi, this is Michael. Quick question. Do
Sure.
we have the latest final version of the way the EC was written up and described? I'm just looking on my computer. If not, I'd love to make sure I have it. Because I know we went through some iterations, right? And
well, we did, yes. They accepted our recommendations completely.
Right.
They didn't change anything. And I thought we had gotten everybody a copy of that, but we can certainly do that. Get you a copy of the final that was approved by City Council.
yeah, I just don't recall. And I'm looking here. I'm just trying to see if I have that final version. I know we iterated and we created it. I'm just trying to find the final. So I don't see it in my on my computer, but it may be in my email somewhere. So if it's easy,
I don't know, Katie, do you know if we did that? Or I don't know if Sue has joined us yet, but.
A copy of that final resolution that council approved in, I don't know if that was sent out or not, but we can make sure it gets sent out to the
Let's
task
just go ahead and send it out to everybody again to make sure that everybody has it. And if we could do that right away, because I'm sure you all would like to review that before you decide you want to maybe submit your name. So we'll go ahead and we'll send that out to everybody. Katie, would you please make a note?
Sure. I'll see if I
Thank you.
can find it before the end of this meeting too.
Yeah, and if we could just email it to everyone today, that'd be great.
Sure.
And I have an understanding that the technical team doesn't have to live in Dallas. Is that correct? And
That they what, Maria, don't have to,
live in the city of Dallas.
you're exactly right about that. The 15 members of the commission have to live in Dallas, but the 8 members of the technical panel do not. Yeah, it's kind of one of the reasons we set it up the way we did. Okay, so now, unless anybody has any more questions? Okay, thank you. And we're going to go to item number 4, which is Rita's update on the Texas 2021 legislative session. And Rita, are you glad it's over?
It's like going to the circus every day. I mean,
Rita, you're muted.
Okay, Rita, take it away.
Yeah, but it
All
ain't.
right. Yes, indeed. I am happy I'm not there. But when we get to the end of the presentation, you may see that we are soon going to be diving back into the fray. But yeah, I'm glad it's over. And I'll tell you, there was a lot of drama at the end. And maybe I'll share a couple stories if you haven't heard them already at the end. But so I wanted to do this little recap. And so we will talk about some of the bills that relate to the CCAP and what we're doing and how that may affect things. Thank goodness some bills died. That would have been pretty monumental. Katie, go to the next slide. So the first thing I want to do is talk about the failed bills, because I'm very happy, and you all will be very happy too, that they died. SB 1261 is a bill that I think I told you last month that I thought it was dead. And in our world, we would call this a zombie bill because it went to the House floor for a vote. It got remanded back to Land Grabs Committee, and he's the author of the bill, on a point of order. He brought it up to his committee after he killed a bunch of his bills, a bunch of their bills, and they voted no on getting it out a second time. And apparently the speaker or the governor really wanted it, so they brought it up a third time in committee. But it died on the last couple days of the House because of the election bill going over the cliff, prevented it from coming up. So you never know in the legislature, it's not over till it's over. So thank goodness this bill died. This is the one that gave the state exclusive jurisdiction over greenhouse gases. Both, it started out with indirectly and directly. They took the word indirectly out, so it would have still not been really bad, but thank goodness it died nonetheless. And I don't look for it to come back up if we have a special session. HB 610, I mentioned to you last month. This is a bill that would allow judicial review of any local ordinances that apply to state license holders, whether you're a beauty salon owner, a tattoo parlor owner, builder, developer, you name it. It would just be a huge can of worms. That bill died before it got to the floor. HB 631, we didn't talk about this last time, but I may have mentioned it. This is a bill that would, all solid waste permits have to go through TCEQ, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, to be approved. This bill would help expedite those permits, but it would also prevent cities from thwarting those permit approvals with local ordinances, and also affect a city weighing in on a facility siting. Thank goodness this bill died before it got to the floor. HB 1501 is pretty much self-explanatory. This bill died. This bill would prevent any local ordinance from restricting the use of an appliance fueled by natural gas or propane. This could be a boiler, it could be a stove, it could be a number of things. So these are bills that really would have an effect on things we wanted to do in the future, and thank goodness those 4 bills went off the cliff. Now, there is a bill of concern that got passed, and I mentioned this last meeting, and it is effective immediately. This bill is HB 17 by Deschantel from Beaumont. It did have an effective date of September 1st, but they moved it up to immediately, and the governor has signed it. This bill restricts the city's ability to control energy infrastructure, be it, for instance, we talked about this, natural gas hookups versus electric hookups. Austin, I think, was thinking about a possible ban on natural gas hookups. That's what prompted this bill, along with oil and gas. And that bill has passed. But actually, I think there's a way cities can encourage electric hookups, or maybe even ask for, both sets of hookups to be in development. I mean, there's probably a lot of ways to work around this bill, even though it's in effect. Katie, go to the next page, and we're going to talk about some more. Now, the 2 bills on this page we haven't really discussed. And well, we did a little bit on HB 4472, and I had this under our preferred bill list last time. But as it often happens in the legislature, some bills get stripped of some of the things, especially those of us in the environmental community would like to see. So HB 4472 passed. It's okay, but it was so much better before it got weakened, with things being stripped out between the House and the Senate. This bill expands TERP, the Texas Emission Reduction Program, to include money for traffic congestion mitigation projects, air monitoring, and flaring reduction. But it omitted what I had in our presentation last month. It got rid of the Residential Energy Efficiency Grant Program, which would have been fabulous, but it got stripped out. The other thing we're very concerned about is this. The bill now states that at least _35% of the TERP money can go to TxDOT for congestion mitigation projects. So we're concerned, because it says at least, that perhaps too much money could go to TxDOT. We want to make sure TERP stays intact and doesn't get hurt too much. But I do want to kind of give you a perspective on this. TCEQ will receive a large increase in TERP funding. I work with Cyrus Reed at Sierra Club, and Cyrus estimated that there'd be $160 million per year for TERP, and TxDOT would get about $90 million. Now, in the last 2 years, TCEQ only allocated $77 million, which is less than half, the last 2 years of the TERP program. So that is quite an increase. And in that respect, it's good. But again, some of the energy efficiency stuff that the environmental community wanted in these bills was stripped out. Another bill that you've heard a lot about, and I may go ahead and send y'all, I don't know if you've seen this, tell me if you have, 5 former PUC folks.
Not usually.
That were board members or chairman of the PUC actually wrote an op-ed about SB3, the electric grid bill. So this bill went through a bunch of iterations. It added at least 24 pages to the bill before it was finalized in conference committee. But this bill attempts to shore up the grid. There is the weatherization for utilities, but there are no compliance deadlines in this bill. I assume they're just going to do it with the PUC by rule. And there is absolutely no weatherization in this bill required of at the gas wellhead. And I don't know how much everyone knows about gas wells, but for instance, if you don't drain the tanks when you have freezing weather like we had in February, you need to drain the water tanks or they will automatically kick off a shutoff on a well. And the explanation that was given by Patty on the floor of the House when it was going through final passages, well, we have a lot of what I would say non-producing to barely producing wells, and it would cost a fortune to weatherize all these wells. So the bill passed without any weatherization for where gas flows from at the beginning or at the start. The good news is there were some parts of the SB3 that hamstrung renewable energy. The environmental community and others were able to strip that out of the bill. It really would have put a death knell on all the development that we have going on with wind and solar, but that got stripped out. The other unfortunate part of the SB3 is there was nothing put in the bill about trying to increase energy efficiency or demand response provisions. So that was totally not in the bill whatsoever. But when we're done with the call, I will forward everyone the interesting perspective of these former PUC commissioners and how they feel about SB3. That is an interesting read. There is also an interesting read from the Dallas Fed about the cost effectiveness of weatherizing the grid. So if you haven't seen those, I'll get those to you. Okay, with that, we'll go to the next page. Michael, did you have a question? I just noticed your hand up.
Rita, I'm sorry. I thought maybe you were finished. Let's go through these. I have one at the end. I'll wait to hear everything. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Hopefully I can answer it because I'm not an expert on all these bills, but so let's go to the good stuff that passed. Okay, SB 10. We discussed this the last presentation. It provides for the use of substitute refrigerants instead of hydrofluorocarbon refrigerants, which are high greenhouse gas type of chemicals, hydrofluorocarbons. The interesting part about this bill is it will not kick in till January of 2023. Abbott has signed that bill. Now I added a new bill on this list that we didn't discuss, SB 398. And that establishes what they call the Solar Protection Act. This is by Menendez to make it easier for Texas to go solar. What it does is it's going to require some standard language for sellers or lessors who purchase, who have distributable renewable energy. It will prohibit a city from denying solar panels, except there are exceptions for HOAs and municipal energy utilities and co-ops. Now, if you recall several years ago, I believe it was Richland North Richland Hills and Fort Worth that actually denied the installment of solar panels several years ago. So that would end with this bill. And also it allows a person who owns or operates distributed generation to sell back to the grid at wholesale. So that is another part of this bill. Next, and I'll get to everyone's questions here at the end. SB 415 is a companion to the other grid bills. It allows utilities to contract with energy storage companies to increase their reliability. So those are 3 good bills that passed. Another one I didn't put on this list is SB 900. That's by Alvarado from Houston. That bill attempts to establish some kind of standards for above ground storage tanks. As you know, when Hurricane Harvey hit, a lot of those huge silos, because their roofs move up and down, collapsed, and there was a lot of water contamination and runoff from that. So, and lastly, there were many failed bills of benefit, so many that I couldn't begin to list them all. But the one of the better ones that would help us on CCAP is HB 4120. And that we mentioned last month, expands the state grant program for the purchase of electric buses and infrastructure for those buses, like charging stations for schools. So I'm going to stop there. I do have another slide after this, but it's not on any bill specific. I'm going to talk about huge categories of bills that failed that we should all be mindful of. But I'm going to start with Michael. What was your question? Hopefully I can answer it.
Sure. No, they're not tricky renewable questions. Don't worry. On 398, you made reference to net metering bill credit.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean REPs must provide it or they may provide it?
You know what? That is a good question. I think it's may provide it.
Okay. In other words, they'll continue to what they'll do, because I was working with a customer last week who has a certain energy provider. I emailed them and said, hey, do you give grid bill credit for solar overproduction? They said, no, we don't do that. So that will continue, which is madness in our state. But until these other people act, that's the way it is. The other thing is Public Citizen, and maybe it'll be once the special session's over, are y'all going to write up and promote your perspective on what's happened and the incredible underperformance? Because even though you presented some good ones, this is like a walk to first base, if not a strikeout. It's pretty weak, especially considering the people that died. So we need to ensure that these politicians are in simple language. It's broadcast, it's publicized. Y'all are a great organization always to do that, or whomever. What is your outlook on that getting out, so we can all then distribute further how they did not serve the interest of the taxpayer and the citizen of Texas?
Well, Michael, I'm glad you asked that. I haven't asked my boss, Adrian, if he has planned to write anything, but I will say this, like on SB3, Cyrus Reed from the Sierra Club has written a great recap about a number of bills during this session and his perspective on SB3. I know Luke Metzger from Environment Texas, he has written about individual bills and he has written about SB3. I'm very glad about this article by the Dallas Fed and by the PUC, because as we all know, sometimes the environmental community doesn't get listened to the way they should be. And when it comes from the chairman of the PUCs, the former, I think there's 5 or 6 on this op-ed, saying there is no compliance dates in this bill. In other words, the SB3 is kind of like Swiss cheese. It's got a lot of holes in the bill, and there needs to be rulemaking with teeth and enforcement and regular dates for compliance. Absolutely. And that is one of the things we struggle with at the legislature because, for instance, a number of these bills that I've mentioned today, we had good things in that bill and they got stripped out. It's unfortunate how it happens. It shows but when the speaker and the governor have certain agendas, it's just like that bill that came up three or four times in normal sessions. If you have a bill that either dies in committee or dies on the floor because of a point of order, you usually don't get a second and third bite at the apple. That doesn't happen. But some of us commented to each other this session that it feels like the rule book went out of the building on what was happening behind closed doors. I think I saw Sandy with a question. I see Alan with one. Alan, do you want to ask your question?
I was just going to follow up with Michael's question with regard to SB 398. You know, we're trying to do a net zero development, and one thing that's really hard, because the fact that if we exceed production and at the end of the year, if the provider does not want to provide, honor it, we could put solar beyond the capacity or needs of the home, and it's just we're making an annual contribution to the grid for no compensation. So it's going to limit the size of solar and the production by them not wanting to go past this point of zero. We're trying to get to zero, but we kind of really want to as a builder, we want to nuzzle up to zero. We can't blow past it because it's a waste of funds for my clients and for our build. So I don't know when we can get this remedied, but for now, it's really ridiculous that we can't have a little bit of overproduction and be compensated for it. It's frustrating.
And this is another thing that I've found out over the years at the session. Sometimes you have to develop a base bill and then come back the next session, hopefully with people like you, Alan, and ask for the bill to be cleaned up or tweaked to help legislators realize by them acquiescing to some of the other lobbyists in the building what they're missing for the public, for the grid, and for the common good.
Yeah. An angle of approach on this could be, look, they're encouraging future litigation against builders and developers. We're trying to do the right thing, want to do zero, but when a homeowner doesn't get they get a bill, they get upset because we're trying to size it right up. It gets to zero.
Right.
And we can't market aggressively that we're getting to zero because we're really not going to, we're trying to nuzzle up to zero because that's all the state will let us do without spending money stupidly.
Right. I hear you. Sandy, did you have a question? Otherwise, I'll go back to Michael. Michael?
No, Rita, actually, you answered my question. So I took my hand down. Thank you.
Okay. Let's go to the next slide. And to follow up on kind of a stream of thought we just had. There were whole major areas of bills that failed this session. Some did not even get a hearing. Now, for the first session ever, there was a climate caucus formed amongst Democrats at the Capitol. And they knew they were on an uphill climb, but they said, we're going to raise this issue up and we're going to form this caucus. But unfortunately, for the third session in a row, not any of the climate bills that directly addressed climate change even got a hearing. A couple of the bills would require state agencies that are affected by climate change, like the Texas Water Development Board, Parks and Wildlife, other agencies that have to do with the environment, with water, with land, whatever, to have long-range mitigation plans for climate and what they were going to do to address climate within the agencies. Those bills never got a hearing. And Mayor Johnson and Representative Anchia were two people that were on the forefront of that. Representative Zwiener is another person from south of Austin that had climate bills that they didn't get a hearing. Energy efficiency bills, bills that dealt with distributed energy and demand response, pretty much never got out of committee. And that's unfortunate. We want to reduce our need on the grid. Energy efficiency and demand response is something very important. Another big category that failed was environmental justice bills. There were bills offered by Senator Miles from Houston, Senator Alvarado, Representative Collier from up here, Representative Reynolds, to help especially disadvantaged communities have more say about TCEQ permits in their area. And one leads up to the aggregate bills. On concrete batch plants, there were bills proposed to extend who could come in on a permit as an affected party from 440 feet to 880 yards, actually. It's yards, not feet. And that bill never got out of committee. And there were all sorts of bills where industry would have to have more public meetings and more interaction with communities if they were going to build near these disadvantaged areas. Lastly, I have never seen as many aggregate bills regarding concrete batch plants, crushers, and quarries ever as I had during this session. And only one tiny bill passed. It's SB 952 by Representative Hinojosa that just requires a more detailed plat when a concrete batch plant files for a permit. The mayor of Marble Falls was begging for help because the quarries are overrunning their neighborhoods with dust and traffic. Pecan growers were talking about how their crops were affected by all the dust going on their pecan trees. New grassroots groups have sprung up about aggregates. And it's not just the batch plants, but how all these quarries have developed because fracking requires sand. So there's been a big explosion on quarries. Lastly, and it's not on here, the Railroad Commission. There were numerous bills regarding the authority and enforcement and fines with the Railroad Commission. They didn't even get a hearing. And that's very unfortunate. I was so struck by the amount of people around the state affected by aggregates. I know I am going to talk to my boss about getting together with many of these grassroots groups who had never been to the legislature before about helping organize about concrete batch plants and quarries. So that may become a new hobby of mine in the near future. But that's just some of the things that happen at the legislature. If it's not the priority of the leadership, sometimes they just don't get heard. Next slide, Katie. So is there going to be a special session? I'm sure we're all wondering. We have heard that redistricting will happen in fall, but there is a rumor going around the building that there may be a special session as early as right after July 4th. So stay tuned. Since Governor Abbott has till the 20th of June for those bills that were just passed on the last 2 or 3 days of the session, that may be when he announces it. But we are hearing rumor that some of the priority bills that didn't pass, including SB 10, which doesn't allow cities to use taxpayer money to lobby, might be on the docket. So with that, guys, that's what I have. So I will send you some of those articles unless somebody's got a question.
Does anybody have any questions for Rita at this point?
I see Susan with her hand up.
Yeah, I just have one
Susan.
real quick thing. We received notification this morning that EPA has opened rulemaking relative to PM 2.5 and 10. So stay posted. That may help with some of the batch plant compliance challenges. And if y'all are interested, I'm happy to send you the link.
I'm interested, Susan. I don't think it's come through my inbox yet.
Okay,
I see.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and send that to us, Sue?
I will do
And
that.
I think Jeanette had her hand up.
I just want to tell Rita what a great presentation this was and how helpful it is. And wow, I'm impressed, and I'm just so glad you're doing what you're doing. My question for you is this: how do we get ahead of some of these things for the next session then, and especially how those are aligned with CCAP? And how, Sandy, do we advocate and get a voice out there? Can we do it through this committee, or are we going to have to get kind of an advocacy group aligned with us in some way?
Well,
So-
I think,
Questions there. One was to Rita and one was to you.
okay, Rita, you want to go ahead first?
Well, Jeanette, it's sort of like, let's take the environmental community. We do have probably 20 environmental groups that talk every Friday during session, but we do talk before session happens, like as soon as the legislative election happens, legislators can start filing bills right when that session starts, right before the session starts. So the time to meet with legislators is before session starts, as early as the summer before. And it's also a time now for folks to write op-eds about how unhappy they are with SB3 or other things. I know when I sat through those aggregate hearings, I was there for something totally not aggregate, but those stories really struck me. And I know I'm going to go back. I'm going to get a hold of the mayor of Marble Falls, the pecan growers, the aggregate groups that are grassroots, and try and help them, including a group in Mansfield just beat a concrete batch plant due to silicate levels in Mansfield the other day. I'm going to get a hold of them. So it's good to talk to legislators to give them a couple weeks break after session. But for instance, Michael's and Alan have some things that they wish certain bills had in them, and it was a mistake to let them pass without it. I think it's a good time to let them take notes saying this bill needs to clean up next session. But I do know, I think Susan's, our city's climate group is in conversation, I know, with Houston, Austin, and San Antonio as bills move. But there were so many bills moving. Susan will also tell you that I was bugging her and Omar and the whole environmental committee saying, is anyone coming to testify on this bill? We need somebody, you know? And they came. They came
Well,
on.
we had some
Well,
late nights doing testimony too.
yeah, and Susan had to, unfortunately, after I bugged the council, had to write the testimony for most of it. But so I give Susan big kudos for staying up and working weekends on testimony. But the time is now for us to look at some of these bills while they're fresh in our minds, make notes on what's not there. And it's never too late to talk to the legislators, especially incumbents, because they'll probably stay in office, you know? So.
Okay, I'm going to weigh in on the second part of Jeanette's question. But before I do, I want to also follow Jeanette by saying thank you, Rita. I thought that was a terrific report. And we are so grateful to you for all the work that you are doing in Austin. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't know how you do that. That would just drive me nuts. But bless your heart that we've got you to do that for us.
Well, thank you.
And I also wanted to say kudos to Jeanette. The Urban Forest Master Plan passed council unanimously. Yay! Yay! And that was an enormous undertaking and an enormous success. So thank you, Jeanette, for all that you did to make that happen. So, and then to answer your question about next time, I think one of the things that we're counting on this new environmental commission to do is to be an advocacy group for things that need to happen in Austin. They'll be the ones that will be closely following what the city needs to do. And I think that if we can work with them as advocates and have them be our voice to the city council and to state legislators. Also, I think the environmental commission could also have a voice when the city forms its legislative program every year. The city does I should say every session. Before a session in Austin, the city comes up with its legislative program. They do the same thing every year for Washington's legislative sessions, but every 2 years they come up with a legislative program for Austin. And I think that we ought to ask that that legislative program contain more efforts toward environmental bills. I don't know that it has anything in there about, usually what happens is our legislative program has a few asks and then a whole lot of items. We play defense mostly in Austin. Cities play defense. It's like, please don't hurt us anymore. And so then every once in a while we get an opportunity to actually ask for something. And I'm not sure that we've asked for much in the way of environmental bills. And so maybe we could do that through our new environmental commission. So I think that's several ways there, Jeanette, that we can have a voice that's bigger than the voice we currently have, at least for a city. We have wonderful work that outside groups do, like Public Citizen and all of these other groups that Rita has referenced. But the city needs to, I think, have a bigger voice when it comes to environmental issues in Austin.
So Sandy,
If we're even allowed to have lobbyists anymore, but yes, okay.
that would mean that we could take the opportunity to put together what we really want to support at the next session and maybe even help some of the legislators write the bills.
Well, that would be wonderful. But yes, I don't see why we couldn't do that, especially, I don't know if everyone was on when I was talking about getting your name into me if you're interested in being on the Environmental Commission, but I'm really looking to that group to help lead the way on a lot of these efforts to make improvements in environmental bills in Austin. So, you know, I hope you all get your names to me because I think we have some folks that would be enormously helpful on the commission. So
I know as the masochist that I could be sometimes. And, you know, with some of the bills, like Michael with your expertise, Alan with yours and so forth, you know, we could look at some of the bills the way they were passed out, and already make notes on those bills. I've written bills before. What happens with bill writing is, you know, you can look at the areas that need to be cleaned up. You can write in the new language. And if a legislator carry it, they have to send it to legislative council to make sure it complies with the administrative code. So some of these may be concepts and we may not exactly know the exact part of the administrative code that it has to be written with. But I think this group is perfectly capable of looking at these bills and tweaking language. So I'd be willing to help people do that. And so would our office.
To tie that into the Environmental Commission, I would simply say that there's our opportunity to convey urgency that we have in our city, and we're not sitting around 2 years and waiting for Austin to solve our local problems, because they're not ever going to do it. And I think you, Rita, we can take that effort in 2 years, but we got to convey urgency now to our council and citizenry and businesses here. We can't wait anymore.
And I also agree that with those legislators, some of the worst bills, I have to tell you all, were carried by the chairs of those committees. And for you to write the chairs of those committees and say, these bills are not acceptable, just like the erosion of local control for cities has been a theme for the last 4 sessions. This is not acceptable. Dallas is not San Antonio, and it's not Denton, and it's not Jacksonville. And we should be able to do our own ordinances for our own citizenry, right? So,
Right.
everybody.
I don't think you'll hear anyone arguing with you about that, Rita. That is for sure. Okay, are there any more questions for Rita? No. We did have something on the chat from Tracy. She said, how likely are chambers of commerce to participate in supporting bills?
They do weigh in, just like all sorts of associations, like the Portland Cement Association or the Builders Association. Chambers of Commerce do weigh in. And, you know, one of the things when they were trying to really frankly, it was Senator Hancock's bills that were going to really hamstring renewables, that we should remind some folks that there's a huge amount of jobs in manufacturing, transportation, and the building of those wind and solar farms. And that it's not, if you feel it's not acceptable that one industry gets attacked over another, that we need to convey that to some of those folks that carried these bills.
Rita, do you know if our regional chamber has weighed in at all on any of the green bills? Have they done that to date? Probably not.
I haven't seen them in hearing, but I tell you what's really easy. And someday, if a bunch of you guys want to sit around and I show you the Texas Legislative Online site, I'll show you. You can see all the witnesses on each and every bill's testimony in hearing. So, and that is also a great way, especially with what Jeanette asked, that is a great way of finding allies for the next session, of who was for, who was against, who was on, and you can also get their testimony to know what people were saying that a bill needed to be tweaked to be better or changed or whatnot. So.
Okay,
I have a question.
Maria had her hand up.
Yes, I have a question, Rita, because the bridge between science and studies and all that good stuff and the decision makers is usually academia. And so how would I say this? The more experienced and the more academic formation that the people that are advising the politicians they have, the better. Especially with these topics about climate, about transportation, it's just very, very technical. And so there is a council, it's called the Global Council for Science and the Environment. And this council does precisely that. It works with higher education, scientists, researchers, to give them the narrative to be able to approach the policymakers and hand off really good data that they can understand, so that the bills are actually supported by data. I've seen that done a lot in Washington, but I don't know how that is done here at the state level and the local level. But since I am in the educational sector, higher educational sector, we have a group that's called the North Texas I think it's something like Center for Regional Excellence and Sustainability, CRE or something. And so I would reach out to Meghna Tare because there's a whole group of cities and everything. And if we could, around the different bills that are preparing for next session, okay, around those bills, what kind of technical groups we need to put together to brainstorm and come up with, I mean, politicians are waiting for someone to write a bill for them. And but then there's also the lobbying technical part of getting into the agenda of inviting these people to seminars and things so that they get knowledgeable. So I think we need to do that because there's been such a politicization of science at this point. Science matters, and we need to learn how to process all that mumbo jumbo of narrative that nobody understands into pieces that the legislative people will understand, and then the community as well. So I just think that needs to be done. It's something that keeps me up at night. I don't know how to do it, but I'm willing to take a stab at it. But I even have like a short brochure for academic folks on how to speak to your representative, what to take there, a one pager with certain data, how to research where you're going to present it. And sometimes the technical people of these politicians know nothing about climate. I mean, maybe they know about biology, but I used to study snails. Now you're asking about climate change. So how can we interface that? And this might be totally out of this committee, but I think it's important to start thinking about that.
No, I think it's a model. That's why I think it's one of the models we can use. Why reinvent the wheel if we've got something that works already?
I think, Maria, what needs to happen is you need to grab the legislators way before campaign season. Because once campaign season starts, that's all they think about is raising money and talking to folks. Now you could go to their town halls and bring things up, but on the education side, it's that really, in my view, needs a longer time horizon where they're not running for something and you can actually capture their attention for a certain amount of time. So, but I know Meghna, thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And thanks again, Rita. That was terrific. I think you see there's a whole lot of interest in that.
Oh,
so.
Yay.
Yes. Okay, everyone, we're going to move on to agenda item number 5, which is a report from Susan on our next year's implementation work plan. And then we need input from you guys. So Susan, are you ready?
But I'm trying to find the little thing where I can share my screen.
Okay.
Otherwise, Katie's going to have to probably do it if she's driving. And I don't see the little thing for screen sharing. Oh, here we go. Okay. Here we go. Please let me know if you can see my screen okay. It should be blank for now. All right.
Okay, we can see it.
It looks little though.
All good.
And there's a bunch, so it's little and there's a bunch of slides that have really little writing on them, which is why I sent it out ahead of time so you can kind of follow along. The other thing is the slides that have really tiny writing, that's actually the table that is in the appendix of the CCAP. So that's the other place you can do it if you are like me and somewhat vision challenged. So I kind of wanted to, oops, we're getting text. That's interesting. Okay. I kind of wanted to kind of walk you through where we are so that this is so weird because it does not look like it normally looks. Where we were for this year with our focus, and then we'll walk sector by sector. I've got kind of what we're doing this year. I've got the whole enchilada of actions in each section. I don't know that we have time to do a deep dive in each one, but one of the other things that I think is probably critical is we're looking at a budget of around from $500,000 to $750,000 that is in our draft budget with a potential amendment. So that's the amount of money that we're playing with. And what I would like to do is get your ideas today. We will be doing a similar exercise with the departments. We're working actually with about 19 different departments to implement this CCAP. And so I think it's going to be really important that we get their input into the plan as well. I don't want to commit for my friends and say water or transportation. There we go. That's a little bit better without their input. And so what I'm going to do is get your input, get their input, and then we're going to be taking a break in July, but in August, bring forward a draft plan and get your final hopeful blessing or input moving forward. And so with that, I'm going to dive in. So this year, our focus was on building capacity. We were coming right out of the gate, had a new committee, new task force, and the budget had already been set. And so we looked at, we're not quite ready to be putting solar everywhere. How do we need to get there? This is year one of a 30-year plan. And so we looked at things like education and outreach. We looked at expanding some of the existing partnerships we have. We looked at basically amplifying, particularly in the water sector, some of our existing actions. And then the other thing that was really pretty critical, and Katie will attest to this, is finding a way to appropriately track and make sure that what we were doing had a level of accountability to the public. So with that, I'm going to dive in. We did lots of plans this year, and I've heard people being a little bit critical about having plans that sit on the shelf. I do not plan that way. I plan as a roadmap, and then I go from what's in the plan forward. So the most recently accepted one, thanks to the work by Texas Trees Foundation, is the Dallas Urban Forestry Master Plan. There are 14 actions in that plan. Right behind that is the Strategic Mobility Plan. Our own solar assistance study was done under a grant with the Department of Energy. And then my friends in Public Works they were still working on a sidewalk master plan to kind of help guide measures to make our roadway corridors more friendly to different kinds of transportation. Other plans that are still in process and I anticipate will be completed during FY22 is the Urban Ag Plan, this comprehensive storm drainage inventory being done by Dallas Water Utilities, and then the update to Forward Dallas, which is a comprehensive land use plan. So when we look at where we've been and we look at what else left, I am kind of going for a focus of extending our reach in this next year. So extending our education and outreach. We're in the process of updating our website to provide more information on how individuals and businesses can actually implement climate action on their own, and to be more of a resource towards action rather than planning. And as usual, we are building upon and expanding our partnerships. Some of the plans that we've done are done. And so at this point, we're looking at amplifying actions out of those plans. And then the other thing that we did, and we're working with right now, is we were trying to be nice to our friends in other departments and did quarterly monitoring. And we have 136 actions by 19 departments. And then the city manager wanted monthly reporting. And so we need to find a way to better find a way of being able to improve our tracking and accountability so that it's both timely and we don't lose Katie into one of those high styly jackets with the extra long sleeves that tie in the back. So we're trying to make our tracking a little more easy to do. With that, as you know, we've got a pretty wide breakdown, and we're still looking at trying to implement relative to an environmental justice screen, and we're looking to those co-benefits. So that's still our guiding direction. And there's the LEAF group that Katie ably leads, and they've been really, really helpful. And this is last year's plan. Second quarter, we've got about 62% in progress. It says 21% not started, but that reflects a lot of the plans that are ongoing actions underway by our water department. And so it's not necessarily reflected well in the way that we're counting. We've got a black, white, gray accounting system, and it could be we may need to put it in color with some variations on where we are on some of our actions. So under buildings, we have 16 different actions. The objectives still hold. If anything, that third one on climate resilience really came into view this last February on why that was critical. And it's interesting because we started out thinking it was for hot weather, and then we found out, yeah, it's on the other side of the temperature scale too. And so that's the bigger picture. And this is the littler picture that's really hard to read, and you may want to reference either on the slides I sent or in your CCAP itself. The actions with light bulbs are ones that are in this year's work plan. So we've got a pretty good start. And here's some more. One of the things that we did not anticipate starting, but our planning group is working on as part of their overhaul of our parking requirements, is to look at establishing an urban greening factor. That really takes biophilia a little bit farther. And they are looking to Birmingham, England, Seattle, and Austin, and some other cities for ways of doing this in a way that encourages a little bit greener design. Okay, so I did this in gray, and I won't be able to add in, but I am really excited to take notes on what you think in the building sector. The gray is stuff I think we will be doing next year. We know that post-February, we are looking at funding to update a park and a library or other community center in each of our 14 council districts to be resilience hubs. We're trying to get funding to do a pilot for doing solar plus batteries instead of our trusty gas generators. The other thing that I'm really thrilled about is that our bond office called us and asked us to develop specifications for the 2022, although it may be later, bond program, so that they can incorporate the measures consistent with CCAP into our bond program for facilities moving forward. And so that's a place where I may need some help from some of you on how to provide some specifications that are doable, I guess, and that will be understandable by our building community. With that, I want to open it up. Do any of you have ideas of other things? And I know we got an email from Michael. And so I know he has some ideas, but I am fully open to other ideas as well. Okay, I'm gonna move on then, although somebody's typing in the chat.
Alan has his hand up.
Yeah,
Oh,
Alan
okay.
had his hand up.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just had a question. I had presented I don't know where it would fall, and these are planned actions with regard to buildings. I don't see a distinction in here with regard to the built environment and new construction. Was there going to be anything discussing, implementing some kind of program where we could do support and equity support for people to get radiant barriers and permitting roofs versus not permitting roofs, and then requiring radiant barrier decking or a radiant barrier to be installed and any new re-roof? Is there any because the built environment, to me, that's the elephant in the room. That's going to reduce carbon in a huge way to get radiant barriers on 250,000 single family homes or apartment complexes. So I don't know if that's contemplated in what you have here, but I don't see it.
It is not in the original plan. It would probably go in under the action where we look at updating our codes. We can certainly bring it forward to our housing and other departments. I have no problem bringing it forward.
It's not
no
really a
problem
code issue,
considering-
it's really a process issue.
Well, right now, it's not necessarily required in our codes.
Mhm.
The other group that I would want to bring it forward to would be our housing department, because they would be the ones that would be doing such a program for our lower income homes. So I'm happy to bring it forward and get some temperature on it. I'm happy to consider it because I think it is a good idea. I will say that I have contacted 3 roofers for a radiant barrier and have yet to get a bid or a radiant barrier put in, and that was 2 months ago. So I think they're kind of busy, but we'll see.
Well, when this commission goes into effect, I don't anticipate will be, in the next 2 years that the market's going to remain where it's at. I just think that this is something that's really is a simple fix. It's low hanging fruit. It's not doesn't require a lot of money. It's just a real simple program.
Okay. Could you send me some specifications I could use on that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Katie?
Katie?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that in our current year work plan, we do have to update the code, the building code. And that's part of the greater regional effort with the COG. So there will be opportunities for public input on that. That might be a different process, but just to let you all know, within the next year, the city of Dallas will be updating its building code, and we are paying attention to opportunities to be more green in our code. So that is part of this year's plan as well.
I understand the code is really important, but one of the things is it's not necessarily the action that's going to drive this particular task. It's really going to have to be a building permit department requirement to say if you're going to re-roof a building in the city, it's got to get a permit. And that will be able to drive the action that we're talking about. The codes don't really address the built environment in the same way that they do the new build environment. And yes, I'm really a fan of new build, but the reality is the built environment's got to be addressed, and it's not being addressed.
Big time.
One question, Alan, I might have for you is I think this is an important program, and I think it could make a world of difference for some of our residents.
Mhm.
Until Snowmageddon, until I met you on this task force, I had never heard of radiant barriers before. So it could be that one challenge will be getting information on this to those property owners that could benefit from it. And I'm open to suggestions on even how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's 2 ways to do it, and they both can be addressed. The way you get it done is it's addressed if someone needs a roof permit. And whenever someone needs to rewire a circuit in their home or do a major kitchen remodel, they go and say, oh, well, the rest of your wiring needs updating too. So if you're going to get a permit for your kitchen remodel, you got to redo your panel. So that's all this takes. It's an administrative permitting issue. It's not a code issue, because all these radiant barriers are compliant, and they actually are part of the code requirement for new building. It's the minimum standard to get to the required performance levels of the COG as well as the state 2015 code. So, but it's not those codes, that code's not really directly addressing the built environment.
My worry is this: my friends in sustainable development that issue those permits don't currently have that requirement on their books. And so I will need to change our internal code to make it a requirement so that they can require people to do that.
And they will.
That's kind of where I was coming from on the code.
No, but they will resist it because, yeah, we can tell them that the code requires it, but the reality is they're going to say, well, we don't have the ability to administer those permits. This is really would be an administrative, it would be an online request. It'd be it repairs. This is like replacing a water heater or a plumbing issue. Those are granted very easily. The inspection component's the issue. And no City of Dallas building permit inspector inspects our insulation in all the buildings. All those inspections are done by third parties currently. This is something that could be done by the third party. All it would take is an administrative input and permitting department that you have, in order to get your permit passed, you have to have your third party inspector inspect and see that you've got your radiant barrier installed too. That's all. And it's nominal cost, someone having to redeck, and it's another cost, it's a nominal cost to go ahead and apply a rating.
Okay.
If that's put in place, the subcontracting community will meet the need. Right now, it's not a big need. It will be a big need if people have to do it, and they will gear up to do it.
Okay. I will take it forward, Alan.
Okay.
If you could send me some sample specs, though, that would help me.
Yeah, there's two ways to do it. I'll
Okay.
send it to you. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Sandy and then Tracy.
So let's you and I put our heads together and talk about a process for doing what Alan is suggesting. Because
Okay.
I don't know if that goes through a council committee, and I know he says it's administrative, but how do you move something like that into being in the city of Dallas? So let's put our heads together
Okay.
about that. Okay.
Yeah. And I would want to talk to
Okay.
our building official as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a way of doing this. I know, Alan, you say it's administrative, but just how do we make this happen in the current process that the city uses to get things changed and done? So that's what I want to put my.
Yeah. And from a consumer standpoint, this is a good thing, because really, Sandy, for years, every time there's a hailstorm, we get a lot of out of town contractors that come into town and prey on homeowners for roofing repairs. They're knocking on doors in the neighborhood, and they're not registered as contractors in the city of Dallas because they don't need to have a permit to re-roof. And they many times leave jobs not well done.
Oh, this has been a problem for literally decades.
Yeah.
That some people have periodically tried to address with these roofing contractors that come in after a storm, and they have been unable to get anything changed in all these years. But there's got to be a way to do that.
Yes, and we've got an environmental reason to do it now. This is a really important issue for existing homeowners. It's going to reduce attic temperatures, reduce their energy consumption, and in turn, reduce carbon emissions per household. It's a huge number.
We may have actually gotten to the point now where it's considered part of the green effort, and that we can maybe find a way to get it done, which has never been able to get done before.
It'll kill two birds with one stone. It'll give us a green benefit, and it'll stop that problem, because those contractors will have to be registered in the city of Dallas in order to pull a permit.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be wonderful if we could get it done after like 20 years of trying? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I know Tracy has her hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just second what Alan is saying. I mean, when he brought this up in another meeting, it's just I'm not saying it's a simple fix. I realize y'all have to find
Yeah.
a way of doing that, but it's cheap and not only, I mean, it addresses that equity issue also when you were talking about the energy poverty gap. And so we can't forget that. It's more important in Dallas now than ever to do that. And then, Sue, I just wanted to, on the expansion of the green building certification, I'm just wondering, like, how much oomph or whatever that really has with businesses, and if there's any way to incorporate, I mean, I know you're thinking about this, okay? I just want to bring it up committee-wide about for every aspect where we have an opportunity to do any sort of installation, whatever, to make sure that we are considering training for those entry-level jobs in our lowest income areas. Is there a place to do that in any of these areas at all? Any of these? I'm thinking, of course, specifically about energies and building.
I think we can certainly look at it. I don't think it's in the existing criteria, but we're looking at that right now. So we're open to making changes that make sense. So we can certainly look at it. I think in the grand scheme of things, that hits a couple different of those co-benefits. So we can look at it.
I just don't know in the green business certification program if there's anything currently in there, and really, like, how important is it to businesses to get that certification?
Right now it's a would be nice, and they use it for marketing. It is not as big of a program as I would like, and we're hoping to expand it. And so I think it could use some marketing. I think it could use some tweaking, and it certainly could use a little greater, I don't know, public or public. I can't think of the word. It needs more emphasis.
I think after this past year, both from the racial perspective and from the pandemic perspective of how hard it's hit people economically and businesses, and then also the environmental perspective, which is what I think that the name of that certification says to people right away.
Right.
But all three of those things could be areas that are emphasized within that certification program. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Tracy. We'll take a look at that. Are we good on buildings? If y'all think of anything that you didn't think of today, send me an email. Again, I've got Michael's email. It's probably more in this next sector.
And by the way, is everybody still seeing Sue's presentation? I pulled up the one you emailed. I don't have it on my screen.
Oh,
I can see it.
I can see it.
Yeah.
I can see it.
I'll fix whatever happened here. No worries. Carry on. My problem.
okay. Sorry about that. So next is buildings and energy. Yes, ma'am.
Sue, I just wanted to ask, in reference to your request that people send you an email with ideas, if you do that, folks, would you copy everybody so we all know that these are the ideas that are being sent in? Thank you.
That's a great idea. So next on to energy. The high degree of reliability, there's a little bit of irony there. And it's kind of interesting because when we were developing our objectives under these different sectors, we were worried about hot. What we have learned is that we need to worry about the other end of the thermometer as well. But the overall objectives still stand. The other thing that I kind of want to point out is the solar power generated as shown on this screen. These are our targets. The targets that are in the plan itself are megawatt hours, which is probably a good bulk of the state generation capacity. So I don't know that we're going to do that here in Dallas, but the kilowatt hours is still a reasonable goal, and it's still a lot more than we're doing right now. And so I just wanted to note that there's a change in units on that, but it still is basically a good goal. So this is what we're working on this year with renewable education. The community solar projects that Katie's working on are going well. And our building services division is doing great work relative to the energy policy. They are currently doing an energy audit of all of our, or at least 200 of our energy buildings or city occupied buildings for assessment on whether they would need retrofits relative to energy efficiency. And the beginning slide that we saw in Monday's ENVS council meeting, it looked like a lot of our buildings probably could use some energy efficiency upgrades. But they're doing that systematically. They will be bringing it back to council this fall. And as a part of that, they're also assessing which buildings make sense for implementing renewables. Rita very nicely summarized our activities on renewable energy policies at the state level. I will tell you that the Biden administration has set up an office for climate policy. Gina McCarthy, former head of EPA, is head of that. She has been meeting with the climate mayors. They are looking at ways of getting funding to move the needle, and that's her direct quote, relative to climate action. And they're looking at trying to funnel it directly to the cities and the local metropolitan planning organizations rather than their normal funnel. And so I think we're doing pretty well on the actions for this year. This is what we've got. I think it's one of a couple slides in the CCAP as far as overall actions. And again, the little light bulbs are the ones that we're working on this year. May not complete these, but at least we're doing milestones within each. And this is what we're looking at for, I have FY 21-23. It's actually FY 21-22, although we do 2-year budgeting, so it could be 23. Under E3, we were recently made aware of a solar designation that several cities in North Texas have. I think it's one that actually Michael has brought to our attention. It is a solar city designation under, I believe, Department of Energy. It includes permitting, it includes education, it includes standardized specifications. Corinth, Plano, I believe Denton, and there's one other city has it.
Cedar Hill, right?
I think you're right. It is Cedar Hill. And I think Louisville is looking at it. So we looked at it. There's a lot of what we're going to need to do with our friends in our permit section and in our sustainable design section, because there are several sections that pertain to permit efficiency. Overall, I think that's something that would be really helpful. But it's a significant amount of work. So we've added that to our plate next year because I think it helps in a bunch of different areas. We would like to continue with our community solar, both with working with housing on placing solar panels on some of our affordable housing projects, and also moving forward with the landfill solar project. The green policy, I think we're going to be going from audit to implementation next year. And then ongoing, as we were just talking about, advocating for renewable energy policy. Michael, I think you sent some actions by email, and they're not on here, but that doesn't mean I'm not including them. I just wanted you to bring it up rather than me.
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you. Well, I did send it to everybody a few days ago. I hope I did it in a way that was pretty easy for everybody to understand. I certainly didn't want to be, doing solar or energy efficiency speak, just plain language. So I don't have anything else to highlight here today on it, Sue, unless there's something
Okay,
that you want to bring up, because there's a bunch of stuff there. And
yeah,
I'm going to go back through and try and overlay some of what I wrote into what you've just been showing us, where things
Okay.
fit, if that would be helpful, or call me anytime if you want to do any of that together or whatever.
okay,
helps
I
you.
might take you up on that.
Sure.
I think my primary concern, while I don't disagree that it's a fabulous goal, my worry is that baseline budget. And what I have told our director is we will go as far on this as we get money to do. So if we get more money, we'll do more community solar. And if we get less, well, it kind of limits what we're able to do. But I'm open to continuing to find funding that can kind of expand our reach on this. And I will follow up with you, Michael, to see if we can figure out a way to get this into the program.
Okay, sure. Thanks. Anytime.
Anybody else? Okay, I'm moving on. I'm doing these first, the bigger ones first. Some of them, like water, I will just let you know that I'm probably going to defer to my friends in Dallas Water Utilities. They're making really good progress on the goals they've got, and I don't necessarily want to push them. I want to highlight on this particular slide, one of our targets was to do a single occupant vehicle travel mode shift. In yesterday's regional transportation meeting at the COG, they adopted a resolution calling for a 20% reduction in single occupant vehicle travel. I think it's by 2030. That exceeds our goal. It almost exceeds our goal for 2050. And we do not know yet what that entails. There's a lot of reference on Try Parking It, which is an app that they have that helps with carpooling. I will say that with us being borderline in severe non-attainment, I think what they're doing is trying to proactively move forward with some actions that will hopefully move the needle on air quality. And if anybody wants more information on that, I'm happy to follow up on that as well. With that, these are the major actions we're working on this year. The strategic mobility plan did get adopted. We are now currently working with our planning and urban design group on the comprehensive land plan, which is the other part of T11. We're working with the planning section of sustainable development and our city planning commission. We're supporting their process on revising our parking ordinance. And that's where the discussion of green factors actually came up. They're looking at that as an offset for parking. And so they're doing some really kind of, for the city of Dallas, very innovative thinking. And so I'm kind of excited about that. We will be including continued converting of our traffic lights and street lights to LED. A lot of that is being done in areas that have some crime challenges. And so it is a public safety and environmental shift. There's the tiny goals for those of us that are nearsighted. So it's working with Dallas, DART, and DSD. Continue working on transitioning our bus fleet. We will be continuing to work with our private and public transit operators. Super commuting cities, that's basically the road between Houston and Austin. I'm not Houston, Austin. Well, that is one of the, it's a triangle. There's Dallas to Houston, Houston to Austin, and Austin to Dallas. And so it's trying to work to get alternative modes of getting between those big three cities. And the first one on this list, again, went way farther than we thought we would do. Transportation demand management is what we're kind of doing right now for COVID, which is working at home, among other things, is using shifting hours, shifting shifts, that sort of thing, so that you have less people on the road. Ms. Grayson? I think I've talked about these, so I'm going to shift, and I'm open to ideas. Mm,
Sue,
Yes,
can you
ma'am.
hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear
ma'am.
me? Yeah, I couldn't get my mic off of mute.
Oh,
So I was thinking so many of our goals in transportation have to do with DART,
mm-hmm.
that I was wondering if maybe one of our recommendations to council when we start recommending appointments and people for the technical committee is also perhaps, and RMN kept talking about liaisons, is perhaps to recommend that the Environmental Commission have a liaison with DART.
It's a great idea.
Because I think maybe that's something that we ought to suggest to council as they're considering their appointments and they're considering kind of how to move forward with the Environmental Commission. I'm just thinking if we don't have some sort of regular communication with DART, I don't know how we'll be able to achieve a lot of these goals in our transportation sector that are so DART related.
I would agree. The other thing that is somewhat transportation related is we do intend to continue installing EV chargers. And I have had one of the new council members that will go unnamed at this point reach out and ask what we're doing about expanding our EV charging network. And so they're not even sworn in yet and are looking at some of the things we're doing in this plan, which is all kinds of fabulous.
That is so encouraging. Thank you.
Maria?
Yes, I'm here. This is my passion, transportation mobility. It just has such a huge impact on quality of life, especially of the people that can't afford a car or, so, I mean, this is huge, but it's also one of those services that goes beyond the city of Dallas. It has to be seen with a regional, regional, even national, global, I don't know, a much bigger lens. And so my question is, how do you connect? How does this plan connect to the other plans that are regional, that are national, that are federal, since infrastructure has those different levels, how does this plan connect?
That is the $1 million question. The way I would suggest it connects is with our coordination and communication with our own transportation departments and with North Central Council of Governments as our regional planning organization. Relative to the air quality, with the pending severe non-attainment designation, there's a pretty good chance they're going to have to look at the state implementation plan under the Texas Air Quality Act. I suspect that that's why they did the resolution yesterday related to reducing our single occupant vehicle percentage. I think that is proactively towards intended SIP. So that tie is there. Typically, both the federal and state transportation funds come through the COG for dissemination to cities and other organizations, and or TxDOT just does it. So I would say maintaining a good relationship with our friends at COG, and our staff have been doing a fantastic job of ongoing work, not just within our own departments, but our friends in transportation are the ones that flagged us on this resolution. So we're working with our friends in other departments along the same line. So it's continuing those. It's that key from the first year is the partnerships and communication and coordination, I think is the biggest key. I will tell you that that White House office on climate is working with Pete Buttigieg, who was a climate mayor, and now he's Secretary of Transportation, they are working on climate-related transportation funding that I anticipate coming out later this summer, possibly early fall. But you've got some climate folks pushing buttons on the national level, which I think helps. And their whole thing is trying to push the needle.
Oh, yeah. Buttigieg is awesome and he's knowledgeable. Thank goodness.
Who?
Pete Buttigieg is
yeah.
the Secretary of
Yes.
Transportation.
Yes, and
The other thing that's kind of interesting is Marty Walsh, who's the Secretary of Labor, used to be the head of the Climate Mayors Group. And so you've got climate people in at least two seats of the cabinet, and then you've got the Office of Climate Policy. So they're pushing on, and this relates to the infamous infrastructure bill, and we'll see how it comes out. But they're trying to use that bill to push the needle related to climate initiatives.
Yeah, but then I have, this is a doubt I have. While these initiatives are being pushed, there's enormous amounts of money being put on exclusive, exclusive infrastructure for people that pay tolls. So that kind of incentivizes the other thing, buy your car, and if you can pay the toll, you can get to your destination quick. So when I see that that T14, what I understand is the parking ordinances are trying to, discourage people from bringing in their cars, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have that, but on the other spectrum, you have a whole bunch of investment, and associated to the investment, all types of companies and interests in constructing new lanes, toll tag lanes that are that have their own, finance thing there, while you're trying to do the other. So, where is that bridge? How can that be addressed? Because the more lanes you put in for vehicles, unless you put buses on those lanes, which is what other big cities in less developed countries are doing, like Brazil or Peru or in Europe.
Houston.
Houston. If we don't do that, then we're constructing all this infrastructure for people that can pay the toll, and that are moving one person in each vehicle, and are, of course, the impact on the environment, the impact on everything is larger. So, it's a hot potato, but I just needed to point it out.
Thank you. Point noted. Anyone else on transportation? Going? All right, I'm moving. Let's see if we can do it this way. Okay, zero waste is, when we're talking about the plan now, we're saying A to Z, A being air quality and Z being the zero waste group. We are working with the sanitation department to update the local solid waste management plan, otherwise known as the zero waste plan. What I will tell you is that we're really focusing in on organics, because right now that's about 40% of our weight getting into the landfill. And so that, in fact, I will tell you, and if you don't have it, let me know. I'll send you the link. There is a survey on the street this month relative to attitudes about bulk and brush. That seems to be one of the challenges, is getting people to separate the two. And so we're making good progress here. We have a ways to go. So these are the actions we're doing. It's ongoing recycling, composting. We are working, this was at council 2 weeks ago, probably about a month ago. We are working with our Office of Procurement based on international standards for sustainable procurement to look more at life cycle purchasing as part of a green procurement plan. And it is a multi-department effort. And so I'm pretty excited about that. Everything else we've talked about. So with that, this is the nice, really small, if you're nearsighted, it looks great, table from the back of the book. The trash cans are on the ones that we're working on as far as this year's plan. And the light gray is for what we think we're going to be working on next year. We have several things in the mix right now related to composting. And I'm hoping that we can get a little bit more on the ground on that, if you will. But, and most of these actions are underway now. I anticipate that they will continue next year, but open to other ideas, other things you think we need to be looking at. Ms. Grayson, is your hand up?
I did. You just said, Sue, that people seem to be a little reluctant to separate organic from bulk. But I don't think they've really been given the chance to do that. I brought that up several months ago when we went over this portion of the CCAP. And I was told by sanitation that they are going to get to it and they will be doing that perhaps sometime next year or later this year. That was actually supposed to have started already. And so I don't think it's so much a matter of people being reluctant as the city just not pushing that and not doing it when they said they were going to do it. They should have been doing that already, and they should be educating people to separate organics from bulk. And that was in the schedule to have started already, and they're not. So I think it's more on the city that they're dragging their feet on that particular portion of it, and they need to get going, and they need to solve this bulk waste problem because people are really tired of that stuff sitting out there for 3 weeks at a time. And so I think it's more a matter of the city getting on the ball and doing something more proactively and then getting people to do it. I don't think people are reluctant. I think they'll do it. They just don't know they're supposed to do it.
Okay. Noted.
I was going to say
I'll add one comment to that, though, where the violations are just rampant every month is all the boxes that get thrown in with the bulk trash. It's just, it's unnerving. You drive around and see massive amounts of recycling material in with the bulk guys. So code enforcement would also be good because that should be a ticket if you do that, right? But so it's tough for the city. I recognize Ms. Grayson, but we got to enforce or people will be lazy.
Like I say, I think it's, we need stronger code enforcement, but I also think it's a matter of education. And I don't think we're at the point yet where we're working on that aspect of educating them about separating and also not putting things out there, like you said, that could go into recyclables.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, going on. Water utilities, again, they have 50-year plans. They are implementing per plan. As far as I know, they're on schedule. They may have slowed down on some of the capital construction just because of the rain, but they're moving on. I don't anticipate. So these are some of the things that we've done this year. And again, it's ongoing programs. That's big techs, ongoing programs. As far as I know, the Mill Creek project, which will improve drainage for most of East Dallas through that big tunnel machine, is still underway. That one probably can move forward regardless of what's going on the surface because it's underground. But all of these actions are pretty much ongoing. And they've got 2 or 3 slides just because they've got so much in the plan. The little water droplets are denoting things that are already underway in this year's plan. And I left it blank because there's so many of them. I was being lazy. I didn't type them out, but I think what I would anticipate is that my friends in Dallas Water Utilities will likely continue with the work that they're doing already. Do we have any ideas or input from other sections of the plan that we have not yet tackled in water resources that you might want us to consider? Alan?
Yeah, one of the things that I think is really another piece of low-hanging fruit in water is that it's really not really, people don't realize when they come here as well as when they're here, that we get the same amount of annual rainfall as Seattle. It just is spread out over about a half a dozen storms that last 6 times during the year. So one of the really important things that we're actually doing on the development side, and I don't know how we can encourage it. This is probably not something Dallas Water Utilities will want to tackle. It might be on the development side because, for instance, with rain gardens and with natural xeriscaping, if we're to do more rainwater harvesting, we would be doing ourselves a lot of good. And we'd also be dealing with a reduction of stormwater runoff because that's a huge problem for the city. This is a problem that kills 2 birds with 1 stone, slowing down the water and keeping it. In fact, in our development that we're doing, we're going to keep the water. We're storing 20,000 gallons off of rooftops with rain gardens, and that water is going to be kept and used to irrigate. Now it'll fill up during those rainy weeks or rainy days that we have, and it'll store, and hopefully it'll cycle through a 90-day period, and hopefully in that 90-day period, it'll get full again from a big storm. It's just a simple way and it's also pretty revenue neutral for homeowners in terms of the fact that it does offset a big portion of their irrigation costs. We completed one home just recently in a historical district over in Hollywood Heights that has a large rain barrel irrigation setup. And I don't know how you incentivize that, but I incentivize it with my clients. It's just it's not expensive, and it makes a lot of money. It pays back very quickly. So, but from the city standpoint, encouraging, I don't know how you would do it, but by capturing stormwater runoff or rainwater, just simple rainwater. I'm not even talking gray water. I'm just talking rainwater. That's a big number that we could somehow utilize and minimize our impact of the storm sewers and some of these bigger storms with a little bit more rainwater capture. And I don't know how to tackle it, but that's just an idea.
So if you look at the 4th line down, encourage businesses and residents to plant drought tolerant and native vegetation or xeriscape to reduce irrigation water use. That is underway. It is also part of our WaterWise landscaping program. Additionally, our friends in Stormwater also promote xeriscape. One last thing that we did this year that we will be sharing with our friends in planning and in Dallas Water Utilities is we worked with Texas A&M and the Nature Conservancy. They did some modeling under current and future conditions using green infrastructure to augment the existing undersized gray infrastructure. And that is a critically important study because they showed that we can use green infrastructure to offset some of the more expensive gray. We're looking at a needs inventory of at least $4 billion in drainage, and that's before they can finish the inventory of what they really need. And so if we do a 50 million bond program every 5 years, we're never going to catch up. And so things like green infrastructure help us. And this study that they did, I think, is really critically important because it shows where we can get the most bang for the buck for implementing nature-based solutions.
You know, on a 8-lot home community or an infill, just for an example, we're going to spend maybe at the end of the day $20,000 for an above ground cistern. That's not a big number when you're spreading it out over 8 homes. And on the development side, we have to do the irrigation a little bit differently, but still we were going to spend money for irrigation. It's just, but that water is a resource for the homeowners. It's going to be free irrigation water. So it's going to help offset the landscaping costs. So it's really, it's kind of revenue neutral when you look at it on the development side. I don't look at it as a big ticket item, and it's a big payback. So.
Thank you. I see Jeanette, then Rita, and then Tracy.
I was just going to say, yes, I think the capturing is good, but the green infrastructure, Susan, is a big deal. And also that kind of goes in with the planting of trees and looking at that as we do the mapping for where we might want to plant more trees. I would also remind us that there is green infrastructure for builders and developers in Article 10.
Mhm.
So there's an incentive built in there already to get them to do this. So maybe that's part of the education in working with the Dallas Builders Association and others to identify those areas that are at high risk, and especially when development's coming in.
Okay. Ms. Tracy?
Thank you, Sue. I've probably brought this up in the past, but the Make It Right Foundation used permeable pavement in the Ninth Ward after Hurricane Katrina, and was able to show the city of New Orleans, introduce them to the technology and save the city tens of millions of dollars in pumping every year. So our permeable pavement opportunities, that should, something that procurement should consider for the city, but also for development. Even, it can be it could be a wonderful educational tool used in affordable housing developments, yada, yada, yada. The other thing I put in the chat, this Blue Barrel project, which was brought up to me recently by an energy engineer, Valerie Shoup, who many of us know, that is a very low-cost rainwater catchment system that could be used in community gardens. I'm even thinking about, I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm ignorant to what is going on in Sand Branch right now, but places where, a lower cost rainwater catchment could work. And we have certainly done that type of education on, one-on-one level, or during the DFW solar tour with just residents, average citizens, of how to create their own rain barrel for very inexpensively. Coca-Cola has barrels they give away for this. And anyhow, there are certainly models out there that we can use, and let's not forget that if that water needs to be pumped, we do know a guy. I mean, he came through one of our trainings that sorry, we know a guy.
I know a guy.
I know, but he has designed solar to pump rainwater for irrigation of community gardens, other in crop situations like that. All right, thank you so much. And I got to bounce. I've got a 3 o'clock.
Okay, I'm going to let Rita go, and then we need to probably figure out, we're on goal 5. We can plow through, or if y'all have other remaining ideas, you can follow up. But Rita, I'm going to let you go first.
Okay, a few things. I second what Alan was talking about, and about rainwater harvesting. And actually, Zwiener had a bill 2350 that would have given tax abatements for folks wanting to do rainwater harvesting. She also tried to create a resiliency fund to help promote nature-based solutions in regards to water. The other thing, and I can send somebody the bills if they want to look at them. But I also want to echo something else about the rain barrels. Frisco has a rain barrel program. And Dallas might want to look at some of Frisco's water conservation programs. When I was with Clean Water Fund, we sat down with them. They've got some really interesting things they're doing in Frisco with rain barrels and citizens signing up, and there being a delivery day that people drive up and get them. And lastly, I just want to say, and I've said this before, about our 1% conservation goal every year. Actually, that's what the Texas Water Development Board recommends to every city in the state. And I just would like to see Dallas try to do better than 1%. I think some of the ideas people have could help us get us in that direction. So anyway, that's what I've got.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Miss Sam, if you're still on, what would you like to do about, we're right up on
I
3
was
o'clock
gonna
right now.
say, Sue, we need to do some agenda management here. It's almost 3 o'clock
Yes,
and
ma'am.
there's no way we're gonna get through your last 3 items.
No,
So I think you've gotten through a large portion of it. We can take up the last 3 in August and
okay.
because you will not need to finalize your recommendations before August, right?
Well, I was gonna try to
Well,
get them
wait
as
a minute.
final as possible and bring them to you guys.
Well, let's go ahead and do that. I mean, there's no way we can get through the last 3 sectors, so,
No.
and we
This
don't
has
have a
been-
meeting in July.
Yeah, this has been really, really good feedback today. Let's do this maybe, or might I suggest that we take a look at goals 6 through 8. I think in all 3 of the remaining ones, I know in 6 we're going to be, I think 6, if I remember right, is green. And what I anticipate is implementing actions under the Urban Forest Master Plan. And then 7 is our Urban Ag program, which we will be completing the plan. And then last but not least is our air quality one, which I would anticipate what we're trying to do if we get funding would be to expand our neighborhood air quality monitoring system. So that's what we've got. If you want, take a look. Let me know sometime before the end of the month if you've got some ideas outside of what I've listed. And then what I will be doing is running this by the department directors and our team that's implementing in the 19 different departments and kind of coming forward with it'll probably be a hybrid because they may be proposing some things that we don't have on our radar. I'm perfectly okay with that as well. But I'd like to bring it forward in our August meeting. And it could be maybe in August, we do it backwards and start with 8 and end up on 1. And I'm okay with that if that works for y'all.
So you'll be taking this set of, the work plan, the implementation work plan, and is somebody else wanting to speak? I'm getting some, no? Okay. So you'll be taking this implementation work plan for FY 21-22. Is that going to be part of the city manager's budget presentation in August? Sue?
The things that we're able to commit to, yes, would need to be included if there's a budgetary implication.
Okay, and we are losing task force members, and I had a couple of announcements I wanted to make. So let's go ahead and if you would send your ideas on the last 3 sections to Sue, because she's going to have to include that in her August presentation. Please remember, we have no meeting in July, and then we'll have our final 2 meetings in August and September. I guess now that we're losing folks, I don't know about making the other announcements. I had wanted you, Sue, to tell a little bit about the All-American City results.
I can do that real quick. So the city of Dallas applied to the National League of Cities to be an All-American City. We were one of the 20 finalists, and we had and it was a little odd because it was a video interview, if you will, and presentation. Ms. Grayson kindly helped us speak, as did David Marquis, and one of our stakeholders from the plan development from the Joppy Freedmen's Town Association, Temecula Duro. We gave it a good go. I think we did a good presentation. The theme was equity and inclusion. We provided information on our Right Care program, on our Welcoming Cities program, and on the CCAP. But we were, at the end of the day, they said, you're all winners, but we were number 11 of 10. So we didn't get any hardware, which is sad.
Number 11 of 10. Oh,
Yeah.
well, we had a really good effort. It was a
I
good
think so.
presentation. Yeah.
I think so.
And then the last thing I wanted to mention is the city council is going to have budget town halls in August. And some of the feedback we got from the ones that we held recently, the recent city town hall meetings, the feedback we got was that the CCAP advocates were well organized. Thank you, Rita. And we're going to try to do something like that again for the August town hall meetings so that we have really good CCAP input and make them very aware that the funding is needed for that, and perhaps even some enhancements funding also. So with that, I think we'll need to end. And thank you all very much for attending. Have a good summer, and we will be back in August.
I have a quick question.
Who,
Even
is that
though
Rita?
we're not meeting in July, can we not meet in July, or are people gone? Or is staff gone, or?
Well, generally boards and commissions, and I'm just following the kind of pattern of boards and commissions, generally don't meet in July. And it gives the staff an opportunity to finalize their work on the budget presentation early in August. We can meet. I know I won't be in town in July, but we could meet if enough of our task force members wanted to do that.
The only reason I'm mentioning that is if Sue and staff feel they need resolution on these other goals and more discussion on it to help us be more informed to help on the budget or whatnot, I'll defer to what Sue's thinking is on that. So
I know I was thinking the same thing, that maybe it would be useful to be able to have a meeting in July and talk about these last three sectors of the CCAP so that she could finalize her numbers on her presentation. But I don't know that we'll have enough of the task force members to get a quorum. We could ask.
We could try to do 1 hour for just the 3 parts and scale it back and make something just totally one topic meeting might work. Just if that would cover it for Sue, if maybe Sue doesn't want that.
I am happy to support whatever works for you guys.
Well, if it's helpful to you.
It would be helpful.
Well, I like Rita's idea. I'm willing to do that hour on whatever.
I'm willing to do it.
I will do it. This is
Why
Jeanette.
don't we send out something that asks how many people might be available for a 1 hour meeting in July to finish up the 3 sectors of the CCAP? That would be like the only agenda item,
Right.
unless we wanted to do some discussion of how we prepare for the August budget town hall meetings. That might be something else that we do, but we may be able to do that through emails. So if you want, we could attempt to see whether we could get a quorum. I don't think we could do it without a quorum.
Well, is there some protocol issue, even if it's not an official meeting? What it is, it's a meeting that concerned citizens have to assist Susan?
I have to be pretty careful with our ethics rules. I'm not supposed to be lobbying council. So
Michael, I don't think it works that way.
Okay.
I don't think it
Sounds
works that
entirely
way.
too practical.
We are a formal task force. We're not an informal group of citizens. We're appointed by the council. So I think we have to follow certain rules. And I think one of them is that we have to have a quorum.
Why don't we just go ahead and send something out here soon?
yeah,
So people can prepare and Susan will know whether we're doing this meeting or not, if folks can go or if everyone else is on vacation or whatnot. My goal is I want the CCAP to have as much money as we can push their way. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Okay, Sue, we will send something out asking folks if they're available in July.
will do.
And with that, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Is that Alan?
Second.
Yes.
Second, Rita. All okay. We are adjourned at 3:09 PM. Thank you all very much. Have a good summer if I don't see you in July.
Thank you. Everybody, y'all be well.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Guys, thank you all. Happy summer.
Bye.
Bye-bye.